I do. I don't know. Offers are Monday. I'm gonna find out. I mean, if they go into competition, the conditions that I'll need for it to make sense probably won't make sense. And there is a chance that this goes into multiple offers and somebody comes up and just buys it outright. They've done a lot of the background. They have the zoning. They have confirmation. They have what can be built, what can't be built. Someone like a developer that is really savvy and does this consistently and regularly is probably picking it up. I mean, I think $500,000 a lot when they're almost 100 acres a lot is really fucking cheap. So it's a matter of like, do you want to bring all the servicing? Do you want to build all the roads? Do you want, like, you're doing everything? You're basically building a subdivision. So. And quite honestly, I think that I would dive deeper into it. It's just currently four lots from where it is. Like, it makes sense more. It makes more sense to be like, I don't need 100 acres for one lot. Like, give me 10 acres for God's sakes. I can still build 30. Right. I do know that some is protected land, like some can't be built on, based on where I was kind of going with it. But I mean, even fucking, we just build 10 or 15 around the water. I mean, that's still substantially more than 4. You diversify yourself. So just a couple of builders that I personally know. So I have one guy that built a house, a realtor in my office that built his own house in Waterdown, and they actually won the award in Ontario, I think, for like best custom build of 2019. Really fucking stunning home. He just won the award recently, and so I talked to him, which I really like the house. One other guy that I've known for 10 years for my painting company, I did all the painting for him for a few years, Jonathan Coughlin, does custom builds, spec builds. He's been doing it for a while now. And then one of the like more, there's another builder, Licinio, that worked out in Caledon before, and then he moved to Niagara Falls, and so he got a job as like a president of a company, and he just launched his own home building company in Niagara Falls called Watermark, and they've done 5 or 6 like custom spec builds. So that's who I've been talking to about it anyways. Obviously, if I was to get it, I'd go a little bit deeper, but those are kind of the luxury people. When I talk to Robbie, his vision is like Robbie would buy it and put build a mini house on it that we then fill with our contractors and our trades. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not going to build for $200 a foot because we want to try and cut costs. Like, that's not the play here. It's a totally different play. But he's like, well, no, we'll do higher end finishes. We'll just use our contractors and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. I think anyone that's coming up to build this type of thing, they're willing to drive a couple hours, and you can get a Burlington builder to go to Muskoka for it. So anyways, I do have to hop off though. I got 5 people waiting for me here on Zoom already, and lining up in 5 minutes. So I'm going to get more information on Monday, and then we'll kind of touch base again early next week. All right. Have a good night. Cheers. Bye. Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Matthew, you're on mute.
Unmute. Now you can hear me.
Beautiful.
Awesome. You can see my office paraphernalia here.
Well,
I'm in my son's room. My home office, unfortunately, is right next to our nursery. Bad design choice. And we've got a 1-year-old who doesn't sleep the best, so improvising.
fair enough. Is there anything particular you want me to bring up, not bring up? I have those couple of questions. I tend to just roll with things. And Daniela said we're probably going to have about 20 people that said they wanted to jump on. Paige is the MCA here too, so I got her. She's jumping on here. She'll take a look at it. Really the idea of this is just to see like someone who was successful in an early on in their real estate career. How did you do it? What were the tactics you used? What were the courses you took? What courses would you recommend? Most people that are going to listen in are probably going to be relatively new in the industry, just looking for anything to get themselves kind of started. So I wouldn't go too high level. But definitely I would say if you can mention KW a couple of times and what KW has done for you, that would be obviously valuable for us. And then if you have any questions you want to ask me or whatever, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, perfect. So is it just us on the call right now?
Yeah, just us and then Paige and Daniela, so the leadership team here.
Okay, awesome. Nope, it sounds pretty straightforward. We can go, off the cuff, makes sense to me. I know what it's like to take these training courses and kind of try and pick up a tidbit of information here and there. So you don't need to go like super deep in the weeds for any of this information. But yeah, I think we can handle this pretty straightforward, just kind of Q&A.
Yeah, I hosted the Real Estate Growth Summit. I'm not sure you heard of it. I hosted it last year and I didn't prep at all. So I'm more than happy to kind of run through an improv and work through things. So I can definitely,
awesome.
I can definitely wing it. And if I find that you're stumbling or if I find that you need an extra question or something, I'll find something we can ask. So I definitely will go through the 4 questions or so that we initially asked you, and I got you some answers, but I'll get you to expand upon the answers a little bit. But I'll probably just start off with tell us a little bit about where you are, or where you came from. I don't know if you've ever been on a podcast or not, but it'll be similar to like a podcast interview. Just kind of tell me who you are, where you came from, and then I'll have those 4 questions.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Sounds really good. So this is open to people outside of KW as well? Yeah.
So ultimately what I'm trying to do here is instead of having our leadership team meet with brand new agents that they take an hour and a half or 2 hours of really basic, easy questions, I want to create a system in a way that I can reroute the way that people get to our leadership team. And if they want to know more about real estate, I don't want to pull everyone into the office. Like we're not just going to bring everyone in because they'll sign. We want to have people that come in that grow. And so it's really like showing the success of that. So we're going to use this as well as our 100K in real estate session. And that'll be the 2 courses that we kind of do in the evenings. And that'll be where all of our recruits go too. So
okay, perfect.
Definitely will be a lot of recruits that come through these. I don't know exactly who's Manver and Mark, and I don't even know who's all coming. The girls would know better than I do, and I just show up.
Yeah, no, sounds good, man. All right, well, I look forward to it, and thanks for the opportunity to think about me. Never done anything like this, so kind of a bit outside of regular realm of business. But I think I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and I just feel like it makes a lot of sense to get your name out there and get some exposure and help everybody else out too, right? I know what it's like 18 months ago to be in that same seat, kind of. If people are new to the industry and they came from like a safe job, it can be really overwhelming, right? So it's kind of nice to hear some success stories and kind of how they did it, and know that there's no definite path of how you have to do it. Everybody can do it their own way, and I can share my experience and how I got to my level of success that I'm quite happy with. So yeah, I'm excited to share the news.
Really honest, I would say share most of what you did just there, because it's like vulnerability is like the most important thing for most of these people that are gonna watch. They're gonna see, like when I come in, they think that my world's perfect, and it's like you have no idea how many times I fall on my face in a day. Never mind what has happened to get here. So show vulnerability and that the thing that you've what you've learned and how you've grown, and we'll go from there. I do have 10 people in the waiting room right now, so I'm gonna let them in, and I'm gonna turn off the waiting room so I'm not over here clicking all the time. I'll just enable it. People jump right in, and we'll jump into it.
Sounds good.
All right. Do you go by Matt or Matthew?
Matt.
All right. And DeMarchi?
It's actually DeMarchi.
DeMarchi. Okay, Matt.
Yeah, funny story. I pronounced it wrong for like half of my life. And then one time, one of my teachers, it was my job. I was at my job. I worked for Campari Canada. And they were joking around. They're like, DeMarchi. They're like, what a manji cake. They're like, it's DeMarchi. And they told me I was pronouncing my name wrong the whole time. My parents are not first gen. So
we're going to start with that story. All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Dylan Suitor, intern team leader here at Keller Wiliams Neighbourhood in the junction of Toronto. And I've brought on Matt De Marchi onto the call here. And I'm going to actually have you start off with the story of what you just mentioned about your name. And then what we'll do is get into a little bit about you, what got you into real estate. And then we'll just run through some questions and maybe do a couple of questions and answers at the end. So I'll leave the floor to you. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and tell us that funny story you just shared?
Yeah, so hi, everybody. My name is Matt De Marchi. Little story I was just telling Dylan. I pronounced my name wrong up until 2 years ago. I was actually working for an Italian spirits company, and all the finance team, my managers were all from Italy, and they told me, hey, great to meet you, Matt. Oh, yeah, my name's Matt De Marchi. Excuse me, what's your name? Matt De Marchi. And they saw the spelling, and yeah, so apparently I've been pronouncing it wrong my whole life. It's DeMarchi in Italian, and I am Italian, but my parents are not first generation immigrants. So, anyways, you're always learning throughout your life. So a bit of a funny story. Yeah, so I came actually into real estate. I got licensed in April of 2019. That's when I finally finished my courses, was able to start trading. And I came from the corporate world. So my background, I have my CPA designation. So I was an accountant and I worked in the alcohol industry. And, it is a lot of schooling to get to that point. But I was really not happy with where my kind of life was going. And being under a lot of stress at work, I kind of actually pulled the chute and decided to get out of the corporate world when we had my first son. And I was working on a new job at a craft brewery and putting in just crazy hours. It was a startup brewery. We're super successful, but never felt super satisfied with the work I was doing. No matter how much effort you put in, at the end of the day, whether you got a bonus or a raise was always under the dictation of somebody else, and you couldn't really have a lot of control. And the hours were crazy. So that when I missed kind of a lot of my first year of my son's life, it kind of really struck me. And so at the time, I just decided, I was like, you know what, can't see myself doing this for another 40 years until retirement, or 30 years. So I started actually talking to a friend of mine, Brian Karshi. Some of you guys might know him. He's actually with Keller Wiliams as well. We've been pretty good buddies since high school, and I always knew he was in real estate. He was actually my realtor. And we just went on a car trip one day and started talking about it. And I followed him a lot of his investment flips and everything he did, and kind of wanted to go down that realm, and figured, maybe it makes sense to have my real estate license. So he was actually the one who's actually still at Keller Williams as well, who guided me down the path, gave me a lot of mentorship. And I actually worked on his team started with him in April, right through to November of 2019. So that was kind of the first 6-7 months. Jumped into things with him, and that was probably one of the greatest decisions I made, was working on a team. I don't know if anybody joining us right now, depending how new you are, if you haven't chosen yet, definitely suggest get out there, do some research, and maybe try and look into joining a team if you're looking for experience. I can't say enough about, maybe you're working on a lot of deals that don't put money in your pocket per se, but just having the experience of working on deals just better prepares you and gives you a lot of education, which ultimately will serve your clients, which is what we're in this for, right? So I don't want to say it's selfish to go out there and not be on a team, but I just think it can help both your clients and your trajectory to kind of get a lot more experience under your belt working for a team.
I'm gonna interrupt there, and I'm gonna say I thank you so much for saying that, because I when I first got into the industry myself, I came from a sales background, and I remember talking to my sponsor, and they had actually mentioned to me, it was a couple, and they said 95% of people we would recommend to be on a team to start. And they're like, you're one of those unique people that we think can really be a mega agent and can really run an awesome business. I say, oh, that's awesome. That's great. And my ego, I let my ego get to me. And I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to kick ass. I'm going to be that mega that everyone looks up to and asks questions to. And after 2 years, I was like, why didn't I join a team? Because I just spent 2 years falling on my face. Even if I joined a team for a short period, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, whatever that may be, it gets you a fast track into what the real estate industry is all about, and its support, its training, it's so much extra opportunity that you can have. And I think there's a big conception that you're giving away half your money, you're giving away more. And quite frankly, when running a solo agent business, based on the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which we run the book based on that, it's 38% expenses minimum. So you're at a 62% profit. Well, if you're at a 50-50 on a buy side as a buyer agent joining a team, the difference in what you do is 12%. That only takes into consideration the deals that you would technically do yourself. That doesn't take anything into consideration for the validity that you gain from being on a team. So a question I'm going to ask you, which I didn't prep you for at all, but obviously we're going to go off the cuff here. Do you feel like when you first started on the team, you had a little bit extra validity because you had an experienced agent with Brian Karshi that was kind of leading you and guiding you? Like, tell me what benefits did you have from that?
First and foremost, through my experience of school, I know what it's like to pay a tuition. So I always looked at a team team role and team split, I guess we'll call it, as kind of a tuition, right? It's what I'm paying to get mentorship and education. So, for me, the biggest thing for having, Brian, the BKG team was a bit of a smaller team, so it wasn't a mega team. So I had almost like a one-on-one mentorship, feeling that I could call him up in the middle of a deal, work through his deals, call him up at midnight, didn't matter. He was always there kind of to help guide and support me. And that was probably, just having that confidence, I guess, translates to your buyers or your sellers, right? Just knowing that you come here with experience, what you're doing is the right thing to be doing. That when you're grinding it out on the phone, you're doing the right scripts because you're learning from somebody with success. You're not kind of guessing. And so I think the confidence inspiring for me was the biggest thing. Just knowing that you're taking the right path.
Well, and a lot of times, like, we get so caught up in what potential clients may say, and they say, oh, well, the company that you work for is such a big deal because clients care. Well, truthfully, the clients don't care as much about the company, that they care more about the agent and the independent agent and what you've done. And so by you saying you're on a team, when you're sitting down at a buyer or seller presentation and you're looking to pick up a client, you're able to say, well, my team and I have done $20 million in volume this year. Well, you may have only sold one or two houses, but the fact that you're able to say my team has done this, it gives you that extra clout, that validity that you may be looking for right off the bat. That gives you that extra little bit of confidence as well.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. And, just for anybody out there that isn't considering joining a team, you can kind of have that same conversation just directed towards your brokerage. Our brokerage team did X amount of sales. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be on a team, but that was another kind of thing that I really thought, we're jumping ahead a bit, but like one of my biggest lead gens has been door knocking since I started. I just have great success there.
Let's not jump too far ahead because I feel like we've jumped right into this thing, and I appreciate you doing that. I get super excited, so I do apologize
for
watching here and listening because I feel like we can talk about this forever. But I do want to start off or kind of backtrack a little bit and just you mentioned that you were with Keller Wiliams. You started on a team with Brian. One thing I do want to mention is that you have a young child, which is why your home office is not available for you right now. Why you're on your phone. And so this is the kind of stuff that you do when you're a successful realtor and real estate. So where do you live? Where do you kind of operate? What GCI did you make? Like, what commission did you earn in your first year? And more importantly, how much did you keep? And I'll dive deeper into that afterwards. But tell us a little bit about your location and commissions that you've earned in your first year.
Yeah, so I'm based out of Hamilton. Lived here my whole life. The average sale price right now in Hamilton is $627,000 as of the last week. So if you guys are from Toronto, it might seem a bit lower for you. Second thing is it's so common in Hamilton to be buyers are just armed with the information of 4% is all they need to be paying. So taking those two things into consideration, especially in a hyper competitive market, it is tough to negotiate your commission on the buy side if it's being dictated and you're up against 20 offers. It is difficult to get that up. So as of my first year in real estate, I was on a team. I was paying, I don't know, should we be sharing like split information? Is that open information?
You do you.
All right. So I was paying a 30% split to Brian for all my deals, and that was on top of the 70-30 split with our brokerage. So for the first, when you join a team too as well, at Keller Wiliams, the cap is split in half. So the cap to the brokerage was, I think, 9,500 or 9,000. Then you had the 6% royalty, which is cut in half as well. So first year in real estate, I was focusing mostly on Hamilton. It's just where I grew up. It's kind of where my sphere came from. And for me, my first tactic was to kind of farm a market through door knocking. So in the first year, it resulted in, let me pull up the spreadsheet here. I know that I grossed personally after splits, it was 41,000. So that was after about 7 months trading. And that's everything that closed. Now, when they say, you guys said the rookie of the year, I'd say that 2020 was kind of when all the seeds you sowed came to fruition and you were really able to capitalize on it. And on those relationships that people had time to build. So this year so far, my GCI after all splits with the brokerages so far is 135,000. And I have another 35,000 that will be closing that are firm deals before the end of December, and possibly 2 more tonight. So somewhere in between the ballpark of probably 167 and 180, depending on what happens this evening, will be my total GCI for this year. First year on my own, not paying any team splits, just an independent agent. So, give you guys some context from where I came from. When I was running a finance team at a at a alcohol company making 80,000 a year. So, you know, every year is kind of $5,000-$10,000 raise going through the corporate way. And then all of a sudden, you know, first full year in real estate, a little bit of time under my belt, more than doubled that in a single year, right? So not that, you couple that with the freedom as well that real estate can bring to your life and flexibility. Yeah, that gives a little bit of numbers. This year, I closed on 15 buy and sell ends. And then I've done, I think, 8 leases as well. That's an avenue that I've always done. One of those converted into a buy from last year. So I always tell agents, if you're new, don't snicker at leases. Yeah, they don't put much money in your pocket and they consume a lot of time, but it's a great way to build a relationship that can lead to future sales.
I love it. So I'm gonna circle back to a lot of what you said. I'm taking some notes here. So I'm looking down to the left. I'm looking down. It's probably because I'm taking notes. If I'm looking up, it's because I'm admitting more people into the room here. So I'm gonna run through a few things. You're in Hamilton. Your average sale price is $626,000 as of, I think you said last week. It's important to know that because when you know your numbers, you have that much more confidence and your clients have that much more confidence in you. So one of the most important things you want to learn right off the bat is, what is the average sale price? Second thing you commented on that I want to really bring attention to is you mentioned a 4% commission. Now, when we quote commission, the listing side usually pays, or 99% of the time, the listing side is who pays the commission out. Now, an average in the past has been about a 5% commission, and it's usually split 50-50 between the buy side and the sell side. Hamilton, for some awkward reason, has decided that we're going to continue to beat each other up as agents, and we're going to drop our commission. So over the past few years, the average commission in Hamilton has turned into a 4% average commission, which would be 2% to the buy and 2% to the sell.
Right.
So your average commission then on a $626,000 average sale price at 2% is about $12,000. Now, the reason I bring specifics up there is in Toronto, we're looking at a average sale price around $1 million. And most commission in Toronto is still sitting around 5%. So you are still going close to the 2.5. So you're basically half per transaction. You're like 12,000, 12,500 per deal. We're 25,000 per deal in Toronto,
Right.
which means you have to sell twice as many houses as we do to make the same amount of money. And the reason I bring that up is because this book, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which I'm sure you've read it, I'm sure you've heard all about it. As soon as when you're a part of Keller Williams,
You've got a copy of it, yeah.
Yeah, even other companies, they use this book as the model. And this teaches you how to run a real estate business based on 4 models. Now, this book is based out of the US, and the models all work. The models all still make total sense. But when they talk in the US, the average sale price is $250,000, which means the average commission is even half of what you are bringing in Hamilton. Now, I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there. I'm also talking pretty quick. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will address them at the end of the session here. But the reason I bring all those things up is because the most important thing to focus on when you're a new agent, and please write this down if you're taking notes, stop focusing on commission earned and stop focusing on the volume of sales that you're selling, like volume as in like the sale price. Focus on the number of units that you are selling. And the reason I say focus on the number of units is it took me 3 years to realize that. And I kick myself now going, I wish I focused on the number of units from the beginning. When you focus on the number of units, you have a predictable real estate business. If you're doing 20, 25, 30 units a year as a solo agent or an agent on a team, you are probably working at about capacity, utilizing different systems and models for efficiencies. You're an efficient agent between 25 and 30 transactions a year. Now, if I'm going and selling a property that's $3 million and I sell 2 of them in a year and I make a bunch of money, what guarantee do I have my second or third year? I don't have one. So the activities that you do, and we'll get into lead generation in a second, the activities that you do, focus the activities on the number of units that you're going to transact in and use units as your metric, not commissions or volume. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Anything else you have to add on that comment?
Oh, sorry. One sec here. Oh, okay. Go in the other room, please. Sorry about that, Max. Can you just go in the other room, please, buddy? Yeah, so I think for sure, once you start treating things from, when you read Gary Keller's. Sorry, he's just going to join us, I guess. When you
It's
read
so
Gary
good.
Keller's, when you read about it, it's really about creating a business and not just winging it, right? Creating predictability, and I think that the biggest thing about when you talk about units is realizing, are you at an efficient level? Can you produce more volume? And then it becomes, are you making the most of your days, and are you making the most of your business, instead of just comparing yourself to how much money a Toronto agent makes versus a Hamilton agent, and beating yourself up about it. Because as long as you're working to the best of abilities in your market, you're doing everything you can, right?
Absolutely. And so I'll go back to some of the commissions you talked about. You talked about $41,000 in your first few months on a team. Now, when we talk about a rookie of the year, your rookie of the year is your first full 12 months. So I think you started in May. So that
Yeah.
first 7 months wouldn't have counted towards a rookie of the year award, but your first 12 months is where you're kind of in right now. That's where you're at 135,000 paid already, 35,000 more being paid for 170 total. And you're looking at potentially 2 more deals. I think you mentioned tonight. So
Yeah.
you're looking at potentially getting close to $200,000 in GCI, which is our gross commission income.
Right.
Any idea what your net is on that?
To be honest, I actually don't put a lot into online marketing. I'm gonna guess. To be honest, I guess the answer to that is no. I don't have hard numbers, which is ironic given that I am an accountant by trade. I do track everything commission wise, and revenue expenses through QuickBooks, but my bookkeeping is not the best to say anything. So I don't know. I'm gonna guess I'm probably at like a 20% marketing and expenses cost.
And then you're paying
80% of that.
And you're paying a $19,000 cap?
Yes. Yeah, 19,000 to my brokerage, and then another, I think it's
3,000.
3 to, yeah.
Yeah. So your office in Hamilton's a $19,000 split that caps out, and then $3,000 royalty, and then about 20% expense. Would that be
Right.
including 20% expense?
So the commissions I gave you, sorry, those were already deducting the 21,000.
Okay. So that was after.
That's after my deduction. So that's after all my splits. That's my actual payout. So I'm probably closer to then 190 right now before those other extra deals.
Awesome. Cool. And then you also mentioned freedom. I do want to touch on that because a lot of times people get into real estate for 2 reasons: make a ton of money and be in control of their own schedule. Am I wrong?
Absolutely.
That's exactly what I get whenever I talk to someone. Why'd you get into real estate? Well, those 2 reasons. The only other reason I may get from time to time is because I'm a real estate investor and I do not want to pay commissions anymore, and I'm going to get in my license so I can represent myself. And I'll be honest, that was this guy right here. I was that person, and I regretted it right off the bat because I fell in love with the career. I fell in love with real estate, and I also realized I've now purchased over 80 houses myself, and every single one of those houses I have other people represent me. I don't represent myself because it's almost a liability thing at that point, and it's tough to negotiate a deal.
Yeah.
Are you an investor?
I'm not. I'm not taking action, to be honest. I've been probably for the last 2 years just putting things on hold, but hope to soon.
All right. So the next question I'm going to ask is, what are the top 3 lead generation sources that you've used since you get into real estate?
So number one, for me, ahead of everything else, is door knocking. I just find the connection you make with people door knocking, for me, just actually converts those conversations to potential business and leads way better than cold calling did for myself. So I would say number one is door knocking. Number 2 is working your sphere. So just reaching out to everybody in your network. It's amazing how much business came of that from people that I had no idea would even remember who I was, and have actually converted into business. So that would be number 2. And then number 3 would be, up until this year, was open houses. I was doing really well at. Again, that was part of being on a team. I got access to a lot of open houses because even if they weren't my listings, I'd be able to do the team's listings. They didn't want to do them anymore. So those would be my top 3 for sure.
So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into all 3 of those. You mentioned door knocking was number 1, which is actually a little bit surprising, but it's not surprising when you get into the real estate business, because one of the other things I hear quite often before someone gets into real estate is, oh, well, I have a lot of friends. I have a good sphere of influence. I know a lot of people, and they're all going to use me as the agent. And so very rarely you find that your database and your sphere is a huge source of business, but it's one that we don't tap into enough because we get nervous. We get a little shy. We're not exactly sure how to approach them. We don't have a script that we can use for that individual. So the sphere can be a challenging one to overcome. But I love how you mentioned door knocking and open houses, because those are both farming around something. And open houses are one of the ways that I built my business. You can generate a lot of active business because people are raising their hand and saying, yeah, me. I want to buy. And then you have an active buyer, most likely without an agent right in front of you. How has COVID
Exactly.
affected your door knocking and your open houses? And what are you doing to overcome it?
So with open houses, they're definitely not as successful this year. But we did, as soon as we tried the open house ones. I say we, but I should say I tried the virtual open houses. Didn't really have any success from them. I did them for my clients at the beginning just to show that you're putting all your efforts forth to market the home as best you can. But from a behind the scenes realtor standpoint, between you and I, obviously you do open houses to generate leads for yourself as well. That's one of their best benefits. When things did open back up, I just did all the precautions you possibly could to, keep everybody safe. We only allowed one party through at a time, made everybody wait outside, sign-in sheets you can trace back if anything happened. And then you still got the same experience because come summer, a lot of people opened back up, felt more comfortable getting out. So the turnouts were back, honestly, to normal, as to say, compared to 2019 before COVID. So I still had great success with those this year. Challenges obviously going forward, the city just banned them again, or the province I should say. So back to I guess trying them out virtually. So we'll see how that affects business. Same thing with door knocking as well. Tell me if I'm jumping ahead too much, but went back to door knocking kind of in July. People got more comfortable, took precautions, knocked the door, step back off the porch, keep your distance, just ask people if they were comfortable with you conversing, if you could take your mask off. A lot of people said yes. But there was a little bit of a dicey time in March when I was still pushing it, before there was like a shutdown. It did recoil a bit. I did have a few people, kind of let their opinions fly, and actually took a break from it. Not necessarily just because of those people's comments. It's not like it was like an ego thing and it took the wind from your sail, but it was more that I was afraid it would damage my brand because it only takes a couple people to reach out online and post or create an article about you. So I did stop door knocking from March until about July, and I've been doing it since then. Even now, people seem to be comfortable with it. Again, as long as you're keeping respectful.
Absolutely. And I mean, we have a lot of people on my team that are doing a lot of door knocking as well. And I think as long as you're respectful, you got to put them first. If you knock on the door and they're uncomfortable,
Absolutely.
like, I'm so sorry, I'll walk away. But we were deemed essential. And at the end of the day, people do have to buy and sell houses. And I'm going to find those people as a realtor.
That's it.
As a business owner, my duty is to serve my clients and the clients out there. So finding those people are important. One comment I will make. So you mentioned open houses. Now, how many listings do you carry? Because listings tend to be more challenging to come across, especially new in real estate. You focused heavily on buyers and leases initially, build up a sphere, build up the reputation, and then you'll get into listings. So is your business mainly buyer focused, mainly seller focused? What does that kind of look like for you?
It's been actually, so I track it in a spreadsheet, and are you still there? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Tracking a spreadsheet. So right now it is 50-50, but the bulk of my business starting up was mostly buyers, door knocking, finding people who are interested in making a move, or from your sphere. I'm 33, so I have a lot of we'll call them late bloomer friends that never got into the market early, and they're looking to, first time buyers at this point in their lives. So now at this point, I find that I am able to pick up listings now. I'm better at converting people, and just getting a sale out of it, versus before when I first started, it was a lot of buyers, either first time buyers, or you'd get the listing after they had purchased something, right? So you didn't just generate a random listing. So I'm hoping to take it. Obviously, I would prefer to be on the listing side. Just it's a more predictable income again, right? If you can generate so many appointments and get enough listings every year, as long as you're doing your job and you're pricing things correctly, and you should be able to sell it. Whereas buyers are, I found, unpredictable. I have buyers that I've been working with for a year that still haven't bought. Those who are transitioning into kind of their forever homes take a lot longer to buy than those who are getting into their first house, right? So I'd like to be more on the listing side again for predictability of income.
Fair enough. And the reason I brought that open house thing up is it's something that's quite often overlooked, is that when you're in a part of a brokerage, you can actually host open houses for not just your own listings, your own open houses, but a lot of agents don't want to do open houses when they've been in the business for a while. They don't want to work the Saturdays and Sundays, or they don't see the value in it. And a new agent, that's a perfect opportunity to ask those agents in your office if you want coverage. Did you ever do any of that?
Absolutely. And that was the biggest thing when I joined Keller Williams. I thought that, an office was going to be a super competitive space, that nobody would share their, trade secrets and their hints for success. But I couldn't have been more wrong. And again, just to trace a bit back, that was kind of why I decided to leave a team, within less than a year under my belt to being on a team, is I realized how many resources that Keller Williams had for training. Just being able to reach out to your broker of record, they're so easy to get in hold of, and any situation you can come through that you need help with, they've been through it before. So again, it just inspired my confidence to do that. And so once I was at the brokerage for probably 3 or 4 months, that's when I built some relationships and some network, and was able to just ask people like, who's got an open house this weekend they don't want to do, and people would throw them at you in the summertime. Like you could have more than you could possibly handle. So there was no excuse to not do them, right? Other than if you don't want to give up your weekend, but you could do a Saturday, Sunday every single weekend of the summer.
I love it. Something else you mentioned there is like how available people were to help. That's not something that happens everywhere. I mean, it's having people in the office and a leadership team around you that really wants to help and give back. There's a role for everything. That's really how this whole company has been built out, is strategically around that. Who did you find the most value from outside of the team when you went alone and you were a part of the brokerage?
I found that, so speaking specifically, I don't know if you guys know our team, but there was a few agents that just love to give back and just hold training courses weekly. The Knighton team was one of them. Somebody, I don't know if it was mandated, to be honest. It almost seemed like somebody on his team had a class every single week. They're a massive producing team in our area. So, why not learn from the best? So I leaned on their classes a lot and got a lot of help from them, both scripting, time management, how to push yourself, how to keep accountable, those types of courses. I went to a lot of their courses specifically. And yeah, like that was the biggest resource for me at KW for sure, is the training classes.
And those training classes, I mean, I guess for someone who doesn't know, what do they range from? Like first of all, what is the cost for some of those training classes? And then what kind of stuff would you learn?
So at our brokerage, most of the training is free, the weekly stuff. I did do Ignite. Ignite was a 12-week, I think it was a 12-week program, where you went in 3 times a week for 4 hours and got training. That one cost, I think it was $90. And it was literally just to cover the binder and paper printout cost. There was no actual cost. That was a great one if you guys are starting out. It's exactly what the name sounds like. It just tells you kind of the 12 basic steps to getting into real estate and starting a career, especially if you're coming from a 9-to-5 job, how to kind of build your day and work efficiently and make sure you're covering all your bases. But most of the training was free. It ranged everything from script practicing. It's probably things a lot of people, if you've never been in sales before, have ever done. So you can learn some great tips, and there's so much information you can take in. And I think the most important thing is just digesting everything and taking action with it. But yeah, you can do script practicing. You can do finance management if you've never been on a straight commission job before. Things behind the scenes you don't think about, not necessarily just lead generating. But yeah, there's online marketing, how to host holiday events, and 32-point touch systems to stay in touch with clients. Like, you name it, there's endless resources for anything you want to learn. How to do leases, how to do condos, if you've never done a condo sale, the extra paperwork and what to ask for, probates, estate sales, you name it. Like, there's training for everything. So there's no excuse to encounter a situation where you've not been trained properly for it. And it's free, guys. So all you're doing is dedicating your time.
And when you're new to the industry and you're new to the business, I mean, you got to fill your time, and you should be doing lead generation and training, educating yourself, and taking action.
Exactly.
Awesome. And you mentioned take action. So something I realized is that when I first got into the business, and maybe you recognize this as well, is I'd go to the same training class, and I'd be there, and I'd go to the same training class when I first got into it. I'd be there every single day. I'd do a course, I'd do a course, I'd do a course. And then I stopped going as much. I'd still be doing a course, but I wouldn't be going every single day. It'd be taking a little bit more time. And then what I found was I go back 6 months later, and the same people that were in the class 6 months ago were still there training. You mentioned taking action. I know that's one big thing that doesn't always happen. What was it that made you take action? What was it that allowed you to overcome some of the self-doubt or the insecurities you may have had on your first buy, your first sell? What was it that allowed you to overcome that? Because once you get into it, it's kind of nerve-wracking.
Definitely. So, I mean, the team helped with getting over the initial fears. You know, when somebody's trying to buy a house for the first time and you've never done it yourself, aside from buy your own house, maybe being on that team aspect and falling back on that helped me there. But what promoted me to take action was um, doing manageable size bites, I guess. I mean, you can go to these training classes and learn, 100 things in one day, but I think it's unrealistic to expect yourself to, reproduce that right away and at an efficient high level. So I would just try and take like tidbits of information, be like, this is the three things I'm going to take from this class and implement starting today. And what motivated me to do that was, the first 3 months in, I think I kind of coasted and wasn't super efficient. I just really relied on like, oh, if I reach out to everybody in my database, the sales are going to come flooding to me. I have 400 friends on Facebook. There's got to be enough business there to be happy. And 3 months probably went by, and I was like, shit, this really isn't panning out. Like, I need to step this up and actually start taking action from what these classes are teaching, because these are coming from people who are working at a high level, and the way to get them to their levels to do this. So I'm either going to suffer financially in the back end and it's going to hurt, or I go through this uncomfortable phase where I'm still learning and I'm not going to be great at what they've taught, but the only way to get better is to take action and do it. And I can tell you, the minute I started taking action on those classes is when my business just totally turned around. Just utilizing your time and making sure that it's being spent where it's actually turning into potential business instead of just feeling busy. Because a lot of agents, when they start, will just do things to keep themselves busy, right? So
Passionate about it. That's the thing about real estate is once you fall in love with it, you're passionate about it. You don't do it to be busy. You do it because you truly love it. You like
yeah,
want the next deal. You want the next client. You're willing to work for it. You're willing to do what you have to get there.
yeah, for sure.
So I think one question I mentioned here was like, what training would you give some credit to? Or one, I talked about little about training, but the question that I asked you earlier was, what training will you give credit to for success and recommend to others?
First and foremost is scripting. You guys, if you don't have a scripting partner, or you're not comfortable finding one, if you're on social media, jump out and find a scripting partner. It doesn't even have to be a Canadian. It can be a US person. They're always out there to set yourself, 2, 3 mornings a week where you get up and just script for 15 minutes. But the scripting classes are probably the biggest thing, because I think a lot of agents, they just, they might start by going out and just having conversations and thinking it's going to naturally lead to real estate. But if you don't know how to steer those conversations and steer conversations into turning into business instead of just chatting, you can have a lot of lost business, or you can be a lot more efficient with your conversations you're having. So scripting would for sure be like some of the best classes I've had there. And it can be everything from, converting a certain type of seller, maybe it's a for sale by owner, into listing with you, having those conversations on commission, when, especially being a Hamilton-based realtor, it's always the first thing that comes up. Trying how to, script against that. That would be like some of my number one training that I personally found had an instant turnaround for business. Another thing was efficient use of time. When what's the best way to structure your days? And there's lots of classes from different agents, probably at your office as well, whether you're on a team or whatnot. But just how to break down a day, how to make sure that you're actually keeping yourself accountable, just like you would at a 9 to 5. You're putting in so many hours a day. Why are you not doing that in your real estate business, right? It's not okay to just wake up in the morning, do an hour phone calls, and then wait for your phone to ring or an email to come in, right? So if you want to have a business and you want to produce like some of these people you see, then that's what they're doing. And learning, a lot of you get in this business, how do you know how to structure a day? You don't, right? You don't know what the right things to be doing are. Should you be on the phone 8 hours a day? What's the proper mix, right? So training classes on that were huge. Other ones that I've been finding more useful this year is goal planning. Now that things are a bit more predictable and I've seen success, I feel like it makes more sense to do goal setting and breaking your plan down backwards to understand how much, how many appointments you have to be setting, how many phone calls you got to be making. And again, just as you mature as a business owner, I guess you could call it, being in real estate self-employed, is how to become more predictable and how to better structure. So coming accountable. So for me, the goal setting probably this year is something I'm taking from training a lot more this year than I had last. So that's just, I guess, some of the training I've found super helpful for myself.
So you mentioned goal setting. You mentioned like how many appointments you need, how many contacts you need to make. Where did you get all that information?
Through the classes. I mean, it's all available on KW as well. You can actually punch in, work high level, how much you want to make next year, how much of that you want to be working with buyers and sellers, how many calls you need to be making a day to get that many listings or pick up that many buyers. It's all there. All the tools are there.
I love it. So, I mean, I've asked the questions I had. I'm curious if anyone that's listening in has any specific questions on an agent who's, I guess, Matt, you're technically in your first full year in real estate. So someone who's looking to get into real estate or someone who currently is in real estate and wants to take it to the next level, you've clearly done well, closing in on 200,000 total commissions in your first full year. Any questions that anyone wants to kind of raise their hand or drop in the chat box that we can answer? I'll give it a second for anyone to unmute themselves and say something if they'd like. Nothing.
Yeah, I got a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I'm huge on cold calling. I'm just kind of curious what kind of tools you use when you were door knocking to kind of track where you were walking around and all that.
So the first thing I did was establish a farm market. So when I started door knocking, I always felt, and this is, everybody's going to do it differently. For me, I felt I always had to come to the door with something of value to the person, right? Not just door knocking. So when I started on the team, we would door knock out in Mount Hope, and we would bring like a neighborhood report, like snapshot report. So, you know, there was a cost obviously associated with printing those out, but I always felt you had to bring something of value. So it just gave general neighborhood stats, what sold, yada, yada. So for me, I instead of just cold calling, I always farmed so that if I missed the person the first month, you know, the next month I'd hit them again, or at least leave them with a point of contact where they could reach out to us if it was like somebody who needed to sell right away. And I focus on that. And that's what so many leads from last year, from door knocking a year ago, transacted this year. And that would not have been possible if it wasn't for farming them. So as far as tracking, you mentioned like tracking, what do we use? So I use Command, which is a KW app. It's actually pretty awesome. So you just have it on your phone when you door knocked. If people wanted to give you the information, you'd punch in right on Kelly right then and there. It would pick up the street address, enter all those details in, and then you can go add notes later when you get home. And that way it goes directly into your database. So you have no excuse not to follow up with them right away. I don't know if you're a KW agent, but there's also automated tools. So once you added someone into your database, you could fire off smart plans. You could fire them off monthly neighborhood reports, nurturing them to kind of always have a touch point from you. So that's what I used personally when I was door knocking, and how it converted and kept in touch with people and actually end up getting business from it. That answer some of your question for like kind of what I use to track and keep up to date with people?
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. One comment I'll add in on that as well is if you're a cold caller and calling is what you're focusing majority of your time on, I would say go and get yourself a Mojo membership. So Mojo is a triple line dialer, if you're not aware of it, but it's a triple line dialer. Basically what it does is it's a system. You'll call in and then you'll have 3 phone numbers that'll appear at a time. It'll phone 3 people at a time. And if one person picks up, it'll hang up the other 2. If 2 people pick up at the same time, you can drop a couple different lines and some fun features where it'll drop the call, it'll call it back right away. And it'll basically say, oh, sorry, missed your call or whatever it may be. So Mojo would be what I'd recommend. And then yes, definitely getting a CRM for tracking is really, really important. And in the red book, as I mentioned, it talks about the 8x8 and the 32 touch. And so when you're following up and contacting people, an 8x8 is when you first meet them, you want to talk to them 8 times over 8 weeks. So once a week, you want to give them something, a phone call or an item of value. It could be an email, it could be follow-up, whatever that may be. And then they go into a 32 touch campaign where it's over the course of the entire year. You'll do 4 phone calls quarterly, usually a couple client events, some newsletters, some other items of value, maybe a CMA. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I use Mojo already. Yeah, I have one more question. Sorry, I don't want to took up too much of the time, but so if you had to divide from your sphere of influence, the door knocking and the open houses, if you had to divide your business, how much of those portions are within your business? So for example, 20% goes to door knocking, 40% goes to that. How did you divide that?
So door knocking accounted for over 50% of my business. Whether it be a referral from somebody I met door knocking, that was 50%. And then another about 25% was my sphere of influence. And again, those aren't necessarily just people that are, you know, immediate family or immediate friends. If you were to just import everybody, I don't know if you use LinkedIn from a prior job, prior to commission, real estate, Facebook, Instagram, everything, you just download, you know, you can download those reports and reach out to them. So that was another 25%. And then the other 25% was through open houses.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I have a question here in the chat box. Do you use any social media?
I do. I use a Facebook business page, which I've tried to build up. That way, people, I've had people come up and say, I looked at your Facebook page. I see that you do this and this and this market. So I think having a Facebook business page, if you don't have one, is the first thing you need to do, just to have somewhere for people to leave you reviews. Have content you can go back on that people can check out. I have a personal Instagram page that I mix my business in. Everybody's going to have their own, what they want to do or how they want to split their business up if they want their personal life and business to overlap. For me personally, I always just felt that if I had a real estate only page, that they quickly become, even if you're providing helpful content, if people aren't looking to transact right then and there, they're probably just not going to like your content or use it. So it ends up just not really staying front of mind for them. Whereas for me, I always thought, if I dabble in my personal life and then throw in real estate, they're always getting subconsciously reminded that you're in real estate. So when the time comes, or if they know somebody, it's there. So I always made sure that I kept that personally mixed. So yeah, I use Instagram and Facebook mostly for getting content out there. And I've even had utilize if you're part of groups. So whether it's like if you live in a certain area of town, join those groups, whether it's like a neighborhood watch, I don't know. I've had business come from the most random places. I was at the bank tonight getting a bank draft for a customer, and the guy overheard me just talking about real estate, came out and started talking condos and gave him my business card. So definitely use social media. If you're uncomfortable with it, learn it. You have to use it just to have a presence so people can see and be reminded that you have business there and that they can see and look back on, instead of it just being face to face.
I love it. I guess a comment I'd give you on social media as well is, I'm not sure if you've used the Command Facebook leads, but Command, our CRM at KW, has actually brought in Facebook leads. Our average cost so far year to date, this is as of about a week and a half ago, we brought in over 2 million Facebook leads across Keller Williams worldwide, and it was $1.67 per lead. So just to put that in context, the average cost of a lead in a social media platform when you're hiring a company or buying leads outside are usually somewhere between $12 and $15 a lead. And we've been able to buy in mass as one company by calling Keller Williams. We've partnered with Facebook and with Google to get our cost per lead down substantially. So your cost per lead is mine is around $1 per lead, and we've generated about 3,000 leads. But it's the cost per lead is really, really important, and being able to be a part of our CRM is awesome. Have you used any Facebook leads?
Definitely. It's absolutely incredible. So I used to do Facebook advertising for all my listings. When I was on a team before, kind of Command was around and that tool. And I found it was money out the window. Like, you'd have random people from, even though I set the parameters up properly, I'd have people from Quebec commenting on the listing and getting angry as to why it was showing up as a sponsored ad. Now that I use Command, it's incredible. It downloads their email and phone number, and I'd say 90% of the time they're legit. You can get the people on the phone, have a real conversation right then and there. When I was using Facebook before, I never found that I actually captured anybody's information. It just, at best, I'd get a like and a comment, and I'd try and follow up with them on Messenger, and nothing would come of it. They wouldn't even respond, right? So now that I use it for my listings, it's incredible. I have a listing right now active, and I think I had, 25 numbers for $40 in the first 3 days. 40 people to call, even if a lot of them are like, oh no, I just like the pictures and clicked on it, not interested, but they're in your database now. You can keep touching on them and eventually convert them, right? But when I was using Facebook before, I never got phone numbers and emails, right? So there was really no way of following up other than through Messenger, which is pretty ineffective.
I love it.
So having the right tools, for sure, guys, it can make your life so much easier.
A couple of years back at one of our conventions, Gary Keller came up on stage, the owner of the company came up and said that the goal now is to get your database to 20,000 people. And his big thing was push 20,000 people. How can you get 20,000 people? So using this new feature, if you're paying $1 a lead, you may be at $20,000 for that without a Sphere. It's tough to get to 20,000 people on your database if you're only talking to Sphere, friends, and family. So the other thing I will make a comment on is that the conversion ratio, which is also really important to talk about, a Facebook ad or Facebook lead, you're somewhere between 100 and 200 leads for one transaction. Now, realistically, those numbers are still awesome, because if you break those numbers down at $1 per lead, if you're spending $100 or $200 and following up with these people, it's a lot of time as well, because you're following up consistently. But if you're spending $100 or $200 to get a firm transaction, you're adding 100 or 200 people to your database, and you're following up with them regularly, doing one transaction, it costs you $100 or $200, and you're going to be making a $12,000 to $25,000 commission check, as we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Any other questions? Well, we have a couple of people between you and I that talk fast, so I tried to go a little bit slower. So we burnt through the questions that I had. I mean, I can probably talk for days and ask you a bunch of stuff, but
Sorry, I have a question. Sorry, Matt, how do you expect to shift and pivot your business with COVID and a longer lockdown seeming with if you're not allowed to do open houses or door knocking?
Yeah, so the biggest thing and something that I probably don't do enough of now is reconnecting with everybody in my database and staying on top of them. So now more than ever, people are, home. They're probably excited for their phone to ring, especially if they're not, if they're living by themselves right now. So getting on the phone more, just reconnecting with my database on a personal level, not just like a monthly flyer. So that'll be one, is more personal connections and phone calls. Two would be definitely trying to utilize this new Facebook ad feature within Command better and start doing advertisements, not just for when I have listings, but when I don't. And then just kind of honing in and maybe taking some more training classes on what's the best approach to convert, super cold leads from Facebook into actual business. Because I have had a few this year, so I know that it can happen. And I'm by no means a social media expert at all. I just know it's possible. So as much as I love door knocking, got great success from it, I'm going to probably pivot onto just how to utilize Facebook and social media the best to pick up more leads.
Now we got some more questions coming in. What are your goals for next year, and what are you changing or continuing to do to reach them?
So my goal for next year will be 30 transactions, so bumping up this year's by 10. To do that, I'm going to be pushing a lot what I just mentioned, again, for pivoting my business, but also trying to get more referrals out of past transactions. Those who can advocate for you and have used your services are the best possible. So trying to get more referral business, because again, being new first year and I've not had any referral business actually at all. It's all been either there's a couple people from the sphere, but mostly just cold, like through door knocking, cold calling. So if I can have that same level of business and more, plus get referrals, that might help me get me to the 30 transaction goal for next year.
Awesome. So that'd be about double what you've currently done this year, 15 transactions and some leases.
Yeah. And for me personally, I'm not at a point where I need it, but my wife decided she's going to help me with admin this year, so it'll free up more time to lead generate. So I think that also helped big time.
That's a very important piece. And I'm going to say this, I know this is a newer to real estate kind of conversation, but it's really important because a lot of times someone will come up and say, oh, I had a really good first year, I want to bring on a buyer agent. And immediately your first thought is, I want to bring on a buyer agent because then I can do more deals. The cost of a buyer agent it'll weigh you down because it'll actually cost you more time and energy to get them up to speed. Plus, they're going to get a split of it. Whereas the first hire you should make is an admin, as you mentioned. So bringing on an administrator, which you brought on your wife, allows you to focus on the 5 jobs of being a real estate agent. So script and role play, which you touched on, lead generate, which we touched on, lead follow up, which is kind of taking action, which we touched on, going on those appointments and negotiating contracts. And when you start focusing your time and energy on those 5 things alone, you'll see those exponential results you're looking for.
Exactly.
What are your 2021 goals, and do you use a GPS or a 135? And I'll explain what that is first. So the GPS and 135 that we have in Keller Wiliams is basically a roadmap. It's a 1-page business plan for your year ahead. And so we'll put 1 main goal, 3 priorities in order to reach that goal, and then 5 strategies below each of those priorities. So I kind of set it up as like a 1, and then I have my 3 legs that come down, and then my 5 dashes below that. So do you use a 135 or GPS?
I don't use a 135. I have a different business planning tool that essentially breaking out the year by quarters. And then, how many listings or buyers I need to take on and the amount of appointments to go back. And then a tracking sheet of, how many calls am I making a day? Am I on course to hit that? So that's the way I break it down. I'm not with the 135. Maybe it's a course I need to take if it'll help improve my business. So the answer to that is no, I don't use that specific tool, but I do use a annual business planning tool.
Well, for coming on today and doing this, I'll reach out to you afterwards. I'll have Daniela connect us by email. And what I'll do is I'll actually offer to sit with you for half an hour or whatever and walk through 135, because it's one of the most valuable tools that I've ever used in any business. And it can really set you up for a successful 2021. So I'm more than happy to sit down and meet with you and kind of go over 135, give that one-page business plan. And I think that we'll get some clarity for sure on what your goals can be and how you're going to get there.
That's amazing. Thanks, guys.
My pleasure. Any other questions before we let Matt run off? Well, Matt, I really appreciate you coming on here. You mentioned this is the first time for you to be on a live training event type thing or going live with this kind of thing. So really appreciate you kind of stepping outside your comfort zone and doing this. Really means a lot, and sharing some of your insight and sharing some of the areas that you learned and some of the growth that you experienced is invaluable, and some different stories that we won't be able to hear otherwise. So really appreciate you coming on today. Any last words you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I just want you guys to know, I don't know if you guys have show notes here, or we can send out an email to everybody who's joined, but have my phone number, have my email, reach out to me if you guys have any questions. I've been in your shoes. If you're newer, if you feel more comfortable having a one-on-one conversation, reach out anytime, guys, whether it's if you need help with a deal or, how to have a conversation for a listing you have coming up, feel free to use me as a tool or resource. I do work the Hamilton, Burlington area. I go as far out as Grimsby. So if you guys are working Toronto or outbound and you don't do business out here, happy to refer it out, pay a referral fee, and vice versa. If you guys want to connect, I need to meet people in cities, outlying cities. So I need to build my network as much as possible. So add me to the Rolodex, send me your email, and keep in touch.
I just dropped your email in the chat, and I just dropped
Awesome.
your cell phone in the chat. There you go.
Perfect.
I'm glad you offered, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise. So I give everyone a couple seconds. You got to write down Matt's email address or his phone number. Feel free to reach out, and referrals are always welcome. Referrals are a big opportunity for most realtors. I'm sure you'll learn that really, really, really soon if you haven't yet. Doesn't make sense for you to drive 2 hours to show properties when you can make 25% to do nothing.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Super, super valuable. Anyways, Matt, really appreciate you jumping on here today and spending the hour with us tonight. No other questions. We'll kind of let you go, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for having me, and good luck, everybody. Stick to the systems, and you will get the success.
Awesome. Appreciate your time, man. Have a great night.
See you guys.
Cheers.